You wake up and your breath instantly turns to ice crystals. Your beard is frozen solid to your face. The water in your wooden cup is turned into a solid block overnight. Welcome to medieval winter, where Mother Nature wasn't just cold, she was actively trying to delete you from existence. Meet Thomas, a 25-year-old peasant living in 14th century England. December just hit, and he's about to face what historians call the Little Ice Age, a period so brutal that rivers froze solid for months and entire villages vanished under snowdrifts. But here's the terrifying part. Thomas has zero modern technology. No heating, no insulation, no weather apps warning him about the incoming blizzard that's about to bury his village under 8 feet of snow. The morning starts like every other death-defying day. Thomas rolls out of his bed, and by bed I mean a massive pile of hay that he's built 3 feet thick and reinforced with dried moss, old rags, and anything that could trap air. Why so thick? Because the ground beneath him is literally frozen, solid, and sleeping directly on it would turn him into a human popsicle by morning. Archaeological evidence shows these hay beds could trap enough air pockets to create natural insulation. Basically medieval bubble wrap made from farm waste, but Thomas doesn't have time to appreciate his engineering genius. He's got bigger problems. The fire in the center of his hut, notice I said center, not fireplace, because chimneys haven't been invented yet, is barely alive. Just glowing embers buried in ash. If this fire dies, he dies. It's that simple. Medieval homes lost 85% of their heat through the roof opening meant for smoke, making every flame precious as liquid gold. Here's where it gets insane. Thomas sleeps in his clothes. Not just any clothes. 7 layers of wool garments that make him look like a walking closet. Medieval fashion rule number 1. If you can still move your arms freely, you're not wearing enough. Scientists have proven that layering thin materials traps more warm air than one thick layer. But Thomas figured this out through pure trial and error, mostly error, involving frostbitten fingers and toes that turned black from cold. The wool itself is unwashed, and still contains lanolin sheep oil that makes it waterproof but smell like a wet farm animal. Thomas hasn't washed these clothes in months because wet wool in freezing temperatures equals instant death. There's actually a medieval record of a guy whose wet coat froze so stiff it could stand upright by itself, becoming a local joke for weeks. But Thomas isn't alone in his frozen survival bunker. He's got roommates, and they're not what you'd expect. A cow named Bessie, 2 pigs, 5 chickens, a goat, and even a few sheep all share his 20 by 20 foot space. These aren't pets, they're living heaters. One cow generates about 5,000 BTUs of heat per hour, equivalent to a small modern space heater. Medieval peasants didn't know about BTUs, but they knew sleeping next to Bessie meant waking up with all 10 toes still attached to their feet. The animal hierarchy was crucial for survival. Chickens got spots near windows for early morning wake-up calls. Pigs stayed in corners where their snoring wouldn't drive everyone insane. And cows positioned near walls where their massive body heat could reflect back into the room. It was like a medieval homeowners association, just with more manure and life or death consequences. The breakfast situation is where things get truly medieval. Thomas stumbles to his cooking pot, the same pot that's been simmering continuously for 5 days. Inside is what historians politely call perpetual stew. Reality check. It's whatever didn't kill them yesterday mixed with whatever they could scavenge today. Turnips, parsnips, tree bark for fiber, leather scraps for protein, and if they're incredibly lucky, some mystery meat that might have once been recognizable. Medieval peasants were walking encyclopedias of what won't poison me. They knew exactly which winter herbs could mask the taste of week-old questionable protein. Thomas adds what he calls poor man's pepper, a wild plant that could make even a boot taste edible if used in sufficient quantities. One medieval account describes a family so desperate they tried cooking their wooden spoon, claiming it added flavor. That's not poverty, that's next-level survival. Creativity born from pure desperation. Now here's where Thomas's day gets really interesting. He's got to venture outside. In a world where weather forecasting consists of checking if the pigs are hoarding extra straw or if his cow Bessie is acting extra cuddly, stepping outdoors is like playing Russian roulette with hypothermia. Medieval peasants had learned that animals could predict weather changes. Hours in advance, their lives depended on reading these signs correctly. Thomas grabs his essential winter gear, a wooden snow shovel carved from a single piece of hardwood. Archaeological tests show these medieval shovels moved 30% more snow than modern plastic ones, though they weighed about as much as a small child. Every swing was a full-body workout that kept peasants warm through pure physical exertion. His feet are wrapped in wool socks stuffed with rabbit fur, cat hair, and dried moss. These Frankensocks were literally worth their weight in gold. Medieval market records show a pair of quality winter socks could trade for an entire chicken or 3 days' worth of grain. Thomas's mittens, not gloves, mittens, because medieval peasants understood what scientists proved centuries later: keeping fingers together generates more warmth than separating them. Are stuffed with goose down if he's lucky, cat fur if he's desperate. The real genius of medieval winter survival shows in their housing. Thomas's hut isn't just built on the ground, it's built into it. Nearly 40% of northern European peasant homes were partially underground, creating what modern scientists call geothermal stability. Thomas excavated 4 feet down before building his walls, creating a dwelling that stays naturally warmer because ground temperature remains stable at about 50 to 55 degrees. Once you go deeper than 3 feet, medieval geothermal heating, minus the technology but with all the engineering brilliance, his roof is layered like the world's most elaborate survival sandwich: branches, straw, more branches, more straw, chunks of turf, and sometimes even stones for weight. Some peasants even let grass grow on their roofs, not for medieval green architecture, but because the roots helped bind everything together and provided extra insulation. Plus, goats could graze up there if they were feeling particularly adventurous. The door faces away from prevailing winds, not by accident, but by medieval engineering genius. Thomas built a small entrance tunnel, like an igloo airlock, that prevented cold air from rushing directly into his living space. One medieval writer described entering these homes as crawling through a dragon's throat, though given the smells from all those indoor animals, that might not have been poetic exaggeration. As Thomas navigates through the blizzard using wooden poles he planted along paths before the storm, essentially medieval GPS markers colored with berry juice for visibility, he's carrying a hollowed-out turnip containing glowing coals from his fire. If these coals die during his journey, he'll have to beg fire from neighbors, assuming they're still alive and their fires haven't died too. Medieval winter wasn't just about staying warm, it was psychological warfare against despair. Thomas and his neighbors developed elaborate systems for maintaining hope during months of darkness. They took turns telling stories, sharing gossip, and maintaining the communal fires that meant the difference between civilization and death. The truly remarkable part isn't just that they survived, it's how they thrived. Medieval peasants developed winter crafts, repaired tools, told stories that would be passed down for generations, and created art from whatever materials they could find. They turned survival into culture, transforming the brutal necessity of staying alive into traditions that defined their communities. When spring finally arrived, Thomas and his village had beaten nature at her own game using nothing but raw human ingenuity, animal partnerships, wool that smelled like a barnyard but kept them breathing, and an unbreakable determination to see another sunrise. They didn't just survive the medieval winter, they conquered it through pure human stubbornness and brilliant adaptation. The medieval winter wasn't just cold, it was a months-long survival challenge that required every ounce of human creativity, community cooperation, and sheer refusal to let nature win. And somehow, against impossible odds, they did it, creating survival techniques so effective that modern survivalists still study them today. Want more incredible stories of human survival against impossible odds? Hit that subscribe button and discover how our ancestors conquered challenges that would make modern survival experts weep with respect.